someone at Parliament for a certain transaction. When he called the president, Uganda Law Society, about it, the president told him, "You go there, I will be monitoring." We are having situations where advocates are being arrested for the transactions they are doing. And all the president does is that we are monitoring. You are monitoring. You will never hear the president coming out to say that lawyers who are being, if a judge is not being arrested for passing a judgment against another person, why should an advocate be arrested for doing a transaction which was brought in by a client? Those are the things we want Isaac to address. Those are the things that the Law Society has failed us on. We have a judgment of court where a lawyer has been penalized in costs because the judge, in his wisdom, thought that the lawyer did not do due diligence when he was drafting an agreement. So, if a client comes and says, "These are the instructions, please," you follow client's instructions. You don't follow your own instructions. So, we want a president like Isaac who is ready to protect advocates, who is ready to tell the truth, the power that would be. We want a president who will make the Law Society do what it's supposed to do. Let me tell you, we have had elections in Uganda Law Society, but I want to ask you, Egesa, even when you're the one hosting us, have you ever been interested in any elections of Uganda Law Society before? Have you ever been interested? Or did you even know that the Law Society holds the elections?
No, I know. I've been. By the way, let me tell you something. When I was writing my final exams in senior 6, I knew that I am going to get A's, straight A's, and one of the things I was considering was to study law. And one of my biggest inspirations was Isaac Ssemakadde, who was 1 year ahead of me in school.
Thank you.
So yes, I've been so much interested in issues to do with law. Yes, I did go to engineering school thereafter, but I was so much interested in law. I've been very, very passionate about it. I'm actually going to study law at the London School of Economics starting this year.
Now, that is you.
Yes.
That is you because you are from that background you are talking about.
Yes.
But I can assure you that as of today, I think 80% non-lawyers have developed interest in what this thing called Law Society because of Isaac Ssemakadde.
No, I entirely agree with you.
Yes.
I entirely agree with you.
Yet,
Yes.
yet every citizen should know that Uganda Law Society exists. Because every time there is an abuse of your right, every time there is anything that is not doing well under the rule of law, it should be Law Society first. That's why you see that the demonstrations that were happening in Kenya, Law Society were at forefront to protect these people because that's the role of Law Society. But I can assure you, as a result of Isaac Ssemakadde being in this campaign alone, 80% of people have gotten to know, okay, what is this thing called Law Society?
No, fair.
Which are these elections that which are these elections that have taken over the country? So that's the kind of Law Society that we need. That every time there is doctors are demonstrating somewhere, Law Society should be at forefront to make sure that the doctors are not harassed. Every time traders are facing a problem downtown, Law Society should be at forefront to protect the traders. That's the Law Society is not only for the members. We as members we come in because of the profession, but Law Society as a body is there for the common man and the common citizen. And that's why Isaac stands out as one person who can make Law Society do that. Because as the result of his candidature, even somebody in my village in Ntungamo is calling me, say, "Hey, how are the elections of Uganda Law Society?" Just because of Isaac Ssemakadde being part of this.
No,
he has taken the society to the common man.
To message it, yeah. I think we need to give the man his flowers. He has first of all, he has elevated the Uganda Law Society by just coming into the race alone.
By bringing the race alone,
he has branded the whole election with his.
A person in Busoga, a person in Ntungamo, a person in Kabare knows that this weekend there are elections of Uganda Law Society. But previously you would find elections amongst ourselves alone. Yet Law Society is for the benefit of every Ugandan, every common man, every person who doesn't know. That's why we have the legal aid. What is the essence of our legal aid? Our legal aid is to represent this common man. But does this common man even know that the legal aid exists? But as of today, the common man knows that there is something called Uganda Law Society. As a result of Isaac Ssemakadde being in this election, even if, which I know will not happen, but even if Isaac Ssemakadde doesn't go through, to me, he has already achieved a lot for this Law Society because everyone now is interested. That's why I think this election is the election that has had a lot of space.
There's been a lot of coverage.
Being interested.
A lot of coverage.
Everyone being interested in elections of even border men in town. Hey, Olipolida, Katoke Ojakulonda Ssemakadde. In fact, they know that it is only Ssemakadde who's contesting. So the man has brought the society to the people, and because the society should be for the people, because the rule of law affects every citizen. So that's why Isaac stands out. As of now, the man already deserves his flowers. Thank you.
Thank you to my That was quite interesting. I like your passionate delivery. Before I bring in Dr. Stella Nyanzi and then Mr. Kakaire, I wanted to just read from what Counsel Gawaya Tegule wrote about Ssemakadde. He said about a week ago, he said that it is safe to bet Ssemakadde will never be a judge. This boy was born for the bar. He's a German shepherd that spots a lion and instead of taking to his heels, goes for its neck. After years of doing just that, suing the mafia in the deep state to great acclaim, Ssemakadde sporting a black American style afro hairdo these days. Now wants the Uganda Law Society presidency. So he has done away with the dreads. He has taken on the afro, and now at the time when he's running for the presidency. But I think fair enough. He has taken on David versus Goliath cases, like the case of the case against Hassan Basaja Balaba and the other state actors. This is a case that if concluded, in his favor at the Supreme Court, will be the biggest in terms of award in Uganda's jurisprudence. So I want to bring in Dr. Stella Nyanzi. Dr. Stella Nyanzi, kindly unmute yourself and then speak to us tonight.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Right. So when the advertisement for this space was circulated, I think the invitation was for us to share what we knew about Isaac. Maybe that was yesterday. And I think that for me, given that a number of non-lawyers have spoken, I want to speak as well as a person who is not a lawyer, but a person who's actually witnessed. I don't speculate. I don't speak as many others have from distance. I've been quite close with Isaac as a client in those David versus Goliath cases. And I think for me that one of the speakers who spoke brilliantly gave testimony to Isaac defending him against a private university. Now, I think for me that my intimacy with Isaac was built in the Makerere University, a public university, the oldest in Uganda, a colonial institution. When we went through all the structures of appeal, internal structures of appeal. When I pair up with Isaac as my lawyer, it's around the week in which I undressed in protest against what I still label, the rot at Makerere Institute of Social Research, which I call MISA, going forward in the conversation. And the moment at which I undressed in protest outside Professor Mamdani's office was the culmination of years of civilized English speaking, tense correction, grammatical, respectable engagements with all structures of appeal at Makerere University, starting with my institute, going to the college, going, all over. We had schools, colleges, going to the appeals board, going to appointment board. And then when nobody was giving me audience, because even the men at Makerere agreed, yes, they are contractual grievances. You have labor issues that accrue from the Employment Act of Uganda. You are a public servant. You have a permanent and pensionable contract, which is being breached by this powerful professor of many years, a man whose scholarship I think many respect, and that can't be taken away. But in terms of management, on behalf of a public university and managing a public servant, I wasn't any of those private, part-time contracts at Makerere. I was part-time. I was full-time and pensionable. I'd done my dues, sat an interview, contested against 12 others, and out of the 12, Mamdani had appreciated my work. So people who have over the years questioned my credibility as a scholar don't know the history of my recruitment. Anyway, so the point at which Isaac meets me is at the point of my nude protest, where I occupy first the library at Makerere and then the whole block, which meant I locked Mamdani out. Now, many lawyers, many feminists, many people, in the country, in East Africa, in the world, condemned my nude protest based on Africanist claims around propriety, respectability, very colonized, very civilized thinkings about the African feminist body, the woman's body. My great-grandmother, mother to my grandmothers, probably walked around before cotton was introduced to the cash group. And so in Buganda, we had backcloth. Prior to backcloth, who knows what we had? We had nudity. Outside Buganda, people were walking around naked up to today. The district in Eastern Uganda where cultural propriety means that women do not dress up throughout. And the only time a woman begins dressing up is when her menses begins. The only time that clothing become part of our decorum is after colonization. And the colonial moment is historical. So it's part of our history. We are colonized people. But arguments against giving me audience, giving me justice were raised based on very colonial, like relics, old school relics of how can a PhD undress? Now Isaac understood why one woman and her bare breasts, were the preferred and perhaps only option that would have begun the sort of important conversations I was able to begin at Makerere University. Having undressed in protest, we then went through Makerere University academic staff appeals tribunal processes. And those are what I wanted to first be my point of interjection in the conversation. But Isaac Ssemakadde took on the entire structure of the disciplinary hierarchies in Makerere. He took on management and administration. He took on my case once, twice, 3 times at the staff appeals tribunal, and each time we won. We won. His ability to look Makerere University straight in the eyes and stand beside a naked woman For me, people are talking about giving people their roses. When feminist lawyers would not touch my case, but they were condemning me in the name of morality, in the name of Christianity, in the name of Christian morality, in the name of propriety and respectability, instead of asking, how can a PhD decide to use these feminist methods? Isaac was the most feminist lawyer in Uganda who represented me, and he understood my feminist praxis. So I've had lawyers, women lawyers, feminists, men and women, and people of other genders saying, but he can't be feminist. Actually, in terms of understanding the histories of feminist resistance, when I undressed in protest, Isaac was the only lawyer. And a young student lawyer called, a student of law called Godiva, who went to the press to represent me, right? And then I think moving on, in terms of taking on, there's this aspect of continuing legal education, which is one of the mandates of Uganda Law Society. At Makerere University, which took over when the East African University in Dar, when the East African, School of Law.
University of East Africa.
Yes, when the department, when Makerere was started anyway. I think that in terms of education and learning, I don't expect a person who has not pushed the needle of law, who has not pushed and expanded the boundaries of the law, to be able to even take on that mandate of continuing legal education seriously. I think for me that at Makerere, when the appointments board abusing its powers, colluded with the Minister of Education, Janet Kataha Museveni, to dismiss me because of my work as a literature person writing abrasive poems. Abrasive. My poems at the time were not written. I wasn't writing love songs to a dictatorship. I was writing abrasively, critically, rudely too, which is part of freedom of expression. But I want to speak about the appointments board at Makerere abusing power, negotiating with me as a pawn in order to increase the salaries of professors. At that time, it was negotiation that was happening. An appointments board, after pressure, after we had won in the tribunal, the second tribunal hearing, decided to transfer me unjustly to HUBRIPEC, Human Rights and Peace Center, which Dr. Kagomba is now heading, right? And I think for me, in that moment, the School of Law stands up and says, we don't need a researcher. We need teachers of law. I wasn't qualified in the law. The appointments board of Makerere that teaches lawyers how to become lawyers, appoints the people who are supposed to teach lawyers, is sending a non-lawyer. My PhD is in anthropology, and I specialized in sexual and reproductive health. There was no need for me to go to HUBRIPEC or School of Law. These guys abuse power because they have the Minister of Education and State House behind them, and they transfer me to HUBRIPEC. Isaac Ssemakadde is the only lawyer who was able to stand up to the Minister of Education. He was the only person who was supposed to challenge the School of Law, which had received my research grant from Carnegie Foundation on the School of Law account, right? So if we're talking about continuing legal education and we want to investigate and interrogate the School of Law, which teaches lawyers, at that time it used to be the Faculty of Law when my money was transferred. Who is going to be bold enough to interrogate the continuing legal education, the legal education that lawyers and advocates who have already graduated obtain annually? I think for me that I expect a president of Uganda Law Society who has engaged with the very structures that teach lawyers at LDC, at School of Law. Makerere University School of Law is untouchable. And I think we were able to challenge and reverse my post-suspension transfer to HUBRIPEC at the tribunal with Ssemakadde as my lawyer. He's taken on School of Law, he's taken on HUBRIPEC, he's taken on Makerere University. I want to move now to my case where I think that maybe before I leave that, Professor Ssemakadde's inaugural lecture as professor, after she had come to my protest when I'm naked and screaming obscenities, as African mothers should do every time they are rebelling against the patriarchy, misogyny, and abuse of the phallus in office. Mamdani's phallus and all the men at Makerere University were abusing their penises to try and rape my contract. Now, Sylvia Tamale comes and witnesses my nude protest, and she's shocked. And in spite of being a feminist and a good friend, and she'd been my previous employer in the law, gender, and sexuality unit that's in that corridor in the law building. I sat there for 2 years before going to Maiza. She says to me, Stella, yambale ngoye, yambale ngoye. She's a feminist saying yambale ngoye, pouring cold water on my work. Now, after Ssemakadde defends me, and while we are still in court, Sylvia Tamale receives knowledge, wisdom, understanding, education through our trial. Through my Nyazi versus Makerere court case, Sylvia Tamale gets an education from the lawyer that's being called all sorts of names, okay? Isaac Ssemakadde, by defending me, when I undressed in the most feminist praxis available to a Ugandan postdoc, sitting at one of the highest centers of quality research in Uganda at the time, was able to teach Sylvia Tamale, a professor. In fact, it was so good at teaching that Tamale changes her inaugural lecture to be cemented in the history of professorship as a professor of law, specializing in gender and sexuality and whatever else she did, I think sociology too, based on our work with Isaac. What better teacher of the law does one need than one who has educated Tamale? And so in terms of defending nudity and explaining, laying bare the law and moral concerns around women's nude protests, Sylvia Tamale in her professorship was taught by Isaac Ssemakadde. That's the sort of brilliance I would want to be heading law society today, when professors of law have become so stale in their practice, even when we celebrate them, and they need a shaking and reawakening. I think that Ssemakadde, based on what he did with Sylvia Tamale, a progressive feminist lawyer, was able to do. The third point I want to say, therefore, moving away from education and the School of Law, is that there was a case where, in my work, after Yoweri Museveni failed on his promise to deliver sanitary pads to girls in Uganda, I want to speak to feminists again. That part of the most feminist work for me in my lifetime, 50 years this year, I decided to launch a citizens' protest against a failed promise of sanitary pads. All bleeding bodies know what menstruation means. If you're not a bleeder, your father, your mother, your daughter, your wife, your sister are. So a concern of all feminist people is menstruation. When I take on menstruation and menstrual activism, not for the sake of just feminist struggle, but for the sake of the liberation of Uganda and a contestation against the dishonesty, the lies, the deception, the deceit and the trickery of Yoweri Museveni through his failed promise that was apparent to all who had eyes. I'm criminalized, I'm abducted, and I'm thrown in Chira, in the dungeons of Chira Division. Now, prior to my abduction, I want to talk about a travel ban that was slapped against me. The state, as I'm leaving Entebbe Airport to go to Amsterdam, University of Amsterdam, to give a lecture around why period poverty is an undoing of Ugandan women, African women, etc. I realized my name is on the no-fly list. There's a no-fly list in Uganda of Ugandans who the state did not want to leave the country because we were supposedly embarrassing Museveni and his dictatorship. So when I'm slapped with that travel ban and I'm refused to board the plane going to Amsterdam, Ssemakadde defends me in court when my right to travel, my freedom of movement in and out of Uganda is abused not by any other, but by the state, by Kaima, by civil aviation, by whoever. We take on Uganda, and it's brilliant to learn. That's when I begin learning that there's a whole history of rights in Uganda that many human rights lawyers will not touch. Right to health, right to education, right to what? Our rights to life, rights to security are important rights. I discovered that many lawyers would not touch my right, freedom of movement, which is provided for in the Constitution. Now, Isaac Ssemakadde looked at this case and said, what are the precedents? Like Stella, we are already embroiled in the Makerere matter. Do we really want to take this matter on? And I said, yes, we do. And he said to me, it's going to take time. He says now David versus Goliath. This is getting bigger because it called the Makerere University fighting against Mamdani, fighting against Makerere was a mammoth task, right? And we're in the middle of that, and then this travel ban thing comes up. We go to court. Isaac is defending me. I get abducted. I'm not even present. And he stays almost singularly because many people didn't understand that one can actually defend another's right to move in Uganda. You know what we won? We won that case in 2020. I think 3 years later, we won that case. So there's a travel ban case where my passport is given back to me, my right to move is given back to me, but we established a particular precedent that in the judgment that is taught, maybe not at Makerere as yet, but in South Africa and in Kenya, I know that people refer to that case when teaching about freedom of movement. Now, I want to move very quickly to the buttocks case. I had a pair of buttocks case, which is Uganda versus Nyanzi. And the pair of buttocks, really, people who don't understand that, there's not enough time on this space to discuss why I name Museveni Matako Butako. Pair of buttocks is a bad translation. It should be just a pair of buttocks. And people look at it as insult of the state. I think part of the work that we were able to do with that case particularly is to establish the right. It wasn't even a new, because Onyango, Onyango and others had established already the right to protected speech, especially when we are insulting, when we are saying things about people who hold public office. Now, my form of language was not the Mwenda some sort of language that is discussed in the Onyango Obo case. Mine is calling a person Matako Butako on Facebook. Isaac Ssemakadde takes on my case before digital law has become sexy in Uganda. He doesn't have Facebook. He doesn't have Twitter. He's old school. And I'm wondering, how shall Isaac actually represent me? Now, surprisingly for me, even over and beyond digital rights, digital democracy, over and beyond freedom of expression, over and beyond creative license, those of us who are poets, over and beyond those rights that he was able to defend for me, was a challenge to the Mental Treatment Act that was used to apply for me to be subjected to involuntary mental exam just before my bail application was thrown out. The prosecution, the state prosecutors applied to court to subject me to mental exam. Why? Because the old colonial law of 1938, from which the Mental Treatment Act, which is now the Mental Health Act, derives, talked about dissidents who criticized the colonial administration having to undergo mental examinations to prove their unsound they're mentally unsound, and then they get treatment by the government psychiatrist. Now, Ssemakadde latches on to this and says we cannot do this on our own. In order to hold the Freedom of Expression Computer Misuse Act case, let us apply for, let us petition the Constitutional Court against the Mental Treatment Act. Now, I think for me, that part of the celebration, one of the things that Uganda Law Society has to do is to give access to justice for indigent, meaning poor, marginalized people who are sidelined, and vulnerable Ugandans, giving us justice. I had no money. I had been suspended from Makerere, and I was in prison. And I was thinking, how am I going to afford a constitutional petition, right? And I think for me, a constitutional petition that required senior counsel, because Isaac Ssemakadde then advises me. People say he doesn't collaborate, he's very difficult to work with. In this matter, he advised that we seek the leadership of Counsel Peter Walubiri, a constitutional lawyer who's done lots of petitions to the Constitutional Court. And Peter came on board, and I saw them working together as a team. There were a team of 4 lawyers working on my constitutional petition against my mental treatment, the involuntary, testing that Uganda had started to conduct upon me when I was a prisoner without ability to consent or withdraw consent for the exam. And I think for me that later on when I'm released, Isaac was able to create an opening for me to go before the Parliamentary Committee on Health that was reviewing the Mental Treatment Act, right? And so in terms of opening access to justice, he did just open access to justice for me, but he opened the corridors of Parliament for me to go and participate in the review during the revision and amendment of that law. And so the 2018 amendment of the Mental Health Act, I remember I sat with members of the mental health, mental well-being fraternity in Uganda, different society organizations. And I was there as a dissident who was saying that the colonial impact of the law means that anybody who criticizes the government using language that is found improper is going to be assessed for mental ability and then given mental treatment and then declared of unsound mind, and then we lose credibility as public intellectuals, as public speakers. And so I think for me, a woman without the slightest interest in law goes into Parliament for the first time because Isaac Ssemakadde opened doors for me to go and engage with that committee, and we were able to impact an amendment of the law. I think that the Mental Health Act is revised 2018 is a big improvement to the Mental Treatment Act of 1938 that was used to try and subject me to involuntary mental exam. So for me, that ability to allow even lay people such as myself, non-legal qualified people, to participate in amendments of laws is the work of a president of the Uganda Law Society. I want to move very quickly to another petition that was lodged at the United Nations Working Group Against Detention, a United Nations Human Rights Council a body. When I was abducted for that first case, Isaac Ssemakadde, working together with Aaron Kiza, Nicholas Opio, I had a legal team of 7 lawyers who were put together by my sister, who is a classmate. Sheila Nyanzi is a classmate to Isaac Ssemakadde. And part of the work that Isaac did, again, speaking about his ability to work with others, even when they don't agree in principle, they're able to work together as lawyers, coming together to legally strategize. Part of the work that was done was that then Nicholas Opio petitioned the UN Working Group Against Arbitrary Detention, I think it's called, and the petition is in court because I'm abducted by set people acting on the instructions of SFC. And when I'm disappeared, the petition is happening under the leadership of Nicholas Opio. Isaac remains my lawyer. He's working with senior counsel Peter Walubiri, and he's heading the legal team that's doing the pair of buttocks case, right? And so in terms of working with others, both senior and junior, I have witnessed Isaac doing this work as member of a team. And I think people who say he's a lone wolf, he's a solo gun, Sasirimu, Takuba, he's a loose cannon shooting all over the place. And then
I think
in collaboration with others.
people don't really know him. Yeah,
I have seen him working with teams, even when it was difficult. Of course, what I said previously in the first space you organized where I participated was that similar to many people of great abilities, thinkers, geniuses even, it may not be very easy to work with Isaac because he doesn't come into your space as a friend. For me, he's become a friend over many years of engaging together, right? But initially, we conflicted and we fought because we're both strong personalities. Many lawyers are very strong personalities with big egos, right? And so part of the people who are criticizing Isaac's ability to relate and be companionable have not seen him. I've seen him working together as lead counsel, bringing in senior counsel, but also delegating aspects of my cases, which he was unable to handle. And then others took them on and they celebrated jointly in the wins. And sometimes people have done work together with Isaac on my behalf when I was a prisoner, indigent, unable to do anything, under suspicions of being mentally unsound. And together with teams, Isaac was able to forge my liberation, even because I was convicted in the Esiteris vagina case. So there was another case. I haven't had just one Uganda versus Nyanzi related to the writings I write. I wrote about Esiteris vagina, and I write as a literature person. That poem was actually a poem questioning the material conditions that gave birth to the dictator we have in Uganda. I wasn't writing about Esiteri, the dead woman whose vagina is already rotten. I was writing metaphorically as a poet who was educated at Makerere University using government funds and questioning, inviting people to interpret what it means to birth a monster that eats its own children. Okay, so my poem was really metaphorical. I used the metaphors of vaginas, pussies, cant, chuchus, kasoro, all the words I use because I interpret the vagina into all sorts of casual English as well as Luganda. Now, Isaac being the PCM, or was it PEM graduate he is, who then studies law, was able to understand, it's a work of art. This is literary criticism of abuse of power. And he stands to defend me. Again, feminist in all ways. When feminist poets, feminist writers, feminist thinkers in Uganda, literary critics are saying, Nyanzi, how can you talk about the vagina of Esiteri? Failing to come up to the higher call, to be literary, to think with literature and metaphors of the vagina as feminist. When all those feminists were criticizing me, including Matembe, chief feminist in Uganda, chief moralist, when they joined Lokodo, Minister of Ethics, to cry foul, Isaac was able to be feminist, and he was able to be poetic too. He was able to be a philosopher and say, radical rudeness, that is what you are doing. And he brought sanity to the madness. And I think part of what we do with that particular case is again to challenge stiletto lawyers, stiletto judges like the brilliant Gladys Kamasanyu, who totally doesn't get the literature of the moment as a woman judge, And I think for me that part of the work we did in court with Isaac was Isaac's ability and his security as a lawyer, as a man of the law, to say, Nyanzi, you do the literature and the protest in court. I will be the lawyer. I will represent you using all the legal knowledge that I have, the expertise, the experience, okay? You do your work. How many lawyers are solid enough to entrust the mad woman of the village with power, Because if Isaac was not, if Isaac was what they call him, he's controlling, he's a control freak, he's dominant. If he was that, there's no way he would have given me permission. Isaac is so secure in himself.
No, that's the word actually. The word is secure. He's so secure in himself.
Yes, he's secure in himself that he's able to identify quality, excellence. This is an excellent tool for the moment. We don't need an axe. What we need right now is a needle. Everybody's chopping away the big stick with the big tree with an axe, chop, chop, chop. Lawyers are doing chop, chop, chop. What we need is a needle. Let's use the needle. Nyanzi, you're the needle of the moment. And without telling me what to do, Isaac was able to say, hey. And as long as I wasn't breaching the law, as long as there wasn't contempt of court, he let me do what I did in court. And I think that part of the most brilliant work I have watched of a mad woman in court was my undressing. I undressed in court during my sentence. And the world got my live feed of my breasts undressing and jiggling. I jiggled those breasts so hard, so furiously at Justice at her worship. I don't know what Magistrate Kamasanyu. Hey. One woman to another woman. But it was the OC, Luzira Women Prison, who colluded with the Temple of Justice to take me to an all-male prison, put me on those audiovisual link systems without my consent. Abuse of technology in court.
But Dr. Stella, let me interrupt you a little bit. Yeah. I think for you, maybe because of your level of exposure and education level, you are able to understand what Isaac was calling you to do. And
Isaac was able to understand what I was doing. Excuse me.
No, just a moment.
He wasn't calling me to do anything. We were calling. The Bible says. If I may quote the Bible, deep calls to the deep. The Bible says iron sharpens iron. If Isaac was not apt to the task, Isaac with his LLB, okay, Isaac is an LLB. I don't think he has the LLM. His LLB.
No, he doesn't have the LLM. Yeah.
He's LLB and LD. He's a LGC graduate and he's Makerere. Okay, but he was able to rise up to the occasion. It was iron meeting iron.
No, okay. My point is, he has tried to bring the same thinking in the obtaining situation, especially when it came to the march to parliament. This is the discussion that he was bringing to the legal fraternity when he was trying to mobilize lawyers to call for an extraordinary general meeting of ULS and try to see how they can break the conventional police to prison pipeline. But it has totally been misunderstood, misconstrued, and actually people have turned around and said he was against the march, the protest as in the march to parliament. That's why I was saying maybe you understood him because of your level of exposure and maybe because you had worked with him for a long time, so you were able to see the big picture that he's looking at.
I mean, so in terms of march to parliament, I want to say two things. That I was part and parcel of the teams that sat and organized, strategized day and night for march to parliament, unashamedly. While we are leaderless and tribeless and all of that, we sat to organize jointly. I'm not among those who criticize Isaac for the stance he took. I'm not. So march to parliament critique people who situate themselves within march to parliament and say, oh, because Isaac did not come to court to represent us. I think for me, that homogeneity, don't think we're homogeneous in thinking. We think differently. I'm part of march to parliament. And I do not at any one time condemn or judge Isaac for not coming to court to apply for bail when people were arrested. I want to think for me that I've been a protester organizing protests where we start with Isaac and he said, that is not mine, this is mine. That is not mine, this is mine. I want a Uganda Law Society president who can identify with my cause, advise me, and then know what his place is. I don't want a yes dog, a yes man, lap, 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 yes, 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 piga saluti, everything that the commons want you do. I want a Uganda Law Society president who is able to listen to me, because I've told you in my case, all the all the issues I've had that needed to come before court as an indigent member of Ugandan society, as a vulnerable person too, as a marginalized person, have needed special listening. Okuwuliriza. And I think for me, Isaac listens to the issues of March to Parliament when we're organizing, and he determines. And in fact, he cancelled and told us what his position was, right? And then it's up to us to take the wisdom or not. It's up to us to agree or not. As a person who's been giving instructions to lawyers for some years now, over a decade, I've sat with lawyers, we disagreed, and we parted ways. And tomorrow I come back to them. I don't want a Uganda Law Society president who, even considering the options before him, is going to say yes, 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 yes at every moment. In fact, for me, that is strength of character. The ability of Isaac to participate with March to Parliament thinkers, give his side of the coin, participate with his finances in supporting this person or that person, prison. This is the advice. I called Agatha to hire to advise her about one of the people who were arrested, having consulted Isaac, okay, having been to Luzira and remembering how Isaac would access me as a prisoner. I was able to advise Agatha to hire, who had never entered Luzira Women Prison. Okay, and so when she's being celebrated, part of the work she's being celebrated for having done for March to Parliament, which is amazing work too, I think has also partaken from the input of people like me who gained from Isaac's visiting me regularly, routinely in prison. But I want to move on because you interrupted me. So I mean, the other point about March to Parliament is that the question which young lawyers who are struggling to make money ask in these spaces of campaigning for or decampaigning particular candidates has been the issue around their compensation, their remuneration, their incomes. And I think one of the points that used against Isaac is when he was told there's no money for defending, representing marchers to Parliament, he decides to pull out, right? And I think, again, there's nothing wrong in a lawyer saying for this particular issue, I'm not going to go pro bono. Pro bono is not mandatory, If he weighed the cost of how long it's going to take to represent these marchers, and he decides he wants money to be paid for his transport, his time, his labor.
But he has, Dr. Stellanyans, he has pronounced himself on
yes,
that
I saw
issue.
his pronouncement. Yes, I saw his pronouncement. But me, what I'm saying, for people who are criticizing, and it's lay protesters, it's non-lawyers who are criticizing Isaac because he asked for money. The argument that's used against Isaac by many March to Parliament people is when he is told there is no money to pay for the labor of lawyers defending marchers to Parliament, he then leaves. Okay. And I think for me that I have observed Isaac doing so many pro bono cases. All my cases, almost all of them entirely, were pro bono, right? In fact, at Makerere, when Mamdani was mistreating a number of students on the PhD program, I said to him, we have these 6 foreign students whose scholarships are threatened by Mamdani. Can you take on their cases? And Isaac told me, this is going to be a long upward hill, and they're foreign students going to be standing in Uganda's courts. And I said to him, Isaac, I don't have money. And he says to me, perhaps you can give me a small deposit for photocopying and things like that of 100,000 Uganda shillings. I don't know how much money, I don't know how many of them he represented, I don't know how much time, but we had a number of brainstorming sessions with these students. So in terms of doing pro bono work, nobody is going to doubt Isaac's work. He's done this even outside the coming presidency, because I know that Uganda Law Society has a pro bono legal aid clinic. He had Center for Legal Aid, which is where I studied with him, and then he had the Legal Brains Trust. And these mainly are pro bono legal aid facilities, which a number of us used. But can I quickly? Well, I had a few other points, but can I maybe end with when I'm in prison? When I'm in prison, I am tortured, okay? Because ovumocha mama wa Museveni, okay? I'm tortured. Ovumocha kataha, I'm tortured, and a number of people are sent in to intimidate, threaten, do things to me. In the process, I lose my pregnancy. I had a miscarriage because of multi-layered forms of torture, including physical torture. I lost my teeth. I was kicked in the mouth by a woman wearing a prison officer's boot, and I lost teeth, but I also lost a baby. Now, people who are saying Isaac is not a feminist because he's critical of stilettos don't realize that when I was in a women prison, a prison mandated to give me safe custody as a suspect, who was later acquitted, by the way, so I should never have gone to that prison to start with. But when I was a prisoner, pregnant, lost my baby, and Uganda Prison Services denied to give me access to private antenatal care. I refused to take their care, post-abortion care, because I knew they wanted to kill me, to murder me. I was paranoid like that as a member of the opposition. When that happens, Isaac takes on the Uganda Prison Services. Isaac also goes to Uganda Human Rights Commission on my behalf. When so many feminist lawyers, when many Ugandan lawyers are saying Nyanzi alimba tali lubuto, ekikazi kiri batachiri lubuto, ekikazi kiri postmenopausal, she's postmenopausal, she could not have had a miscarriage in prison. Because the miscarriage of Nyanzi's baby in prison is an indictment on the Uganda Prison Services, which many people celebrate as being the best forces that are pro-human rights. They take care of the human rights of people. Isaac did not just take on the human rights mantle. He becomes a feminist. He becomes a fatherly figure to my dead baby, and he's fighting for the justice of my dead child. Goes to Uganda Human Rights Commission again and again and again. And people have said he's a sensationalist lawyer. He goes to the media. If we had not exposed Uganda Prison Services, we wouldn't have had a statement. Conditions for women prisoners in Luzira Women Prison were changed because of the Uganda Human Rights Council sending teams to come and do investigations. Of course, there were problems with how the process was run because a prisoner being asked to give witness faces threats of all sorts from the prison services, including extension of their term in prison. Okay, and so there were issues with the process. But in terms of initiating a feminist form of redress, when the law had failed, the justice system had failed, when the Ugandan law had been reduced to shit or toilet paper, Ssemakadde innovates and goes to Uganda Human Rights Commission, and he brings on board the Red Cross, not the Uganda Red Cross, but the International Red Cross and Red Crescent. Okay, and I get routine visits from the ICRC in Luzira, and that gave us a modicum of protection as long as I was in that prison. Is it because Nyanzi is special and she's exposed? I don't think so. I think that it is the coming to fruition of the mind of a human rights lawyer who's not just doing human rights law in very bizarre times, when the human rights of citizens and civilians are being abused by those supposed to protect us. Isaac Ssemakadde stood with me and stood for me. And the very last point I want to highlight is a case which is not very popular. When the New Vision, that group of companies, sent ill-trained and ethical journalists to my father's grave in a small village in Masaka to photograph the grave of a dead man, Isaac Ssemakadde was able to fight for the rights of my father against New Vision. We lost that case in court, okay? But a man who has defended the right of my dead murdered baby, the right of my dead father to privacy. So the right of my dead murdered baby was that the mother needs access to post-abortion care in prison. And Ebuku Okwaro was able to come and argue my case. Again, a man who has been able to fight for my rights. Me, I'm a radical queer feminist, okay? I don't do goody-goody feminism. But I understand when Isaac Ssemakadde stands on his feet and calls feminists and women to higher standards that are decolonial, okay? That are demilitarized, okay? That are digitalized, because those three for me, he was able, Isaac has been able to be loyal to those three principles. The fourth one, other people can talk about. But in this moment going forward, because when Isaac becomes president, it's this difficult period of transition, period of Mohozi saying, I'm not going to be on the ballot, but maybe he'll be on the ballot. In terms of the politics of the moment, I want a Uganda Law Society that has a president who is tuned into the times and can address oppressive power without flinching, without fear or favor. And Ssemakadde will do this. I know I've taken a lot of time, so I'll step down. But I think for me that when I begin talking about Isaac Ssemakadde,
you can
I
talk
want to start
forever.
with those who say, if he becomes president, Uganda Law Society wins. If he doesn't become president, Uganda Law Society loses. Isaac is a winner. He's the winning horse. And
You
he's
have
a dog
basically
winning hand.
rephrased Dr. Kavumba's statement. The title of his article, which was ULS needs Ssemakadde more than he needs it.
If ULS is going to hunt on behalf of Uganda and Ugandan, especially indigent, vulnerable, marginalized Ugandans, as they claim they're supposed to do, the only hunting dog is Isaac Ssemakadde. The other dogs won't hunt.
Okay, thank you. On that note, thank you very much, Dr. Stella Nyanzi. Unless my co-host was Mustafa Mugisa, unless he has a question. I think you interacted with Mustafa Mugisa on some of your cases. Unless he has a question for you, we'll be inviting Council Aaron Kiza next to speak to us on the topic that is before us. Mustafa, you have any question for Dr. Nyanzi? Okay. Council Kiza, sorry for keeping you waiting for quite long.
Okay, thank you very much. Confirm that I'm being heard.
Sure, loud and clear.
So it is my distinct pleasure to speak to the audience tonight and to say that I resoundingly endorse Comrade Isaac Ssemakadde, or Semax, as some people want to shorten it. I can relate with some aspects of what the good Dr. Nyanzi was talking about. But for me, there are a few points why I will vote Ssemakadde and why I am encouraging comrades to vote him. One of the reasons is the context in which we are in. Uganda is a military dictatorship. We have some people on the ballot, and there are only three, who do not even realize that Uganda is a military dictatorship, who do not realize the depth, the breadth, the dizzying scope of the rot in the judiciary, in the executive and in the parliament that warrant exceptional leadership skills, including being a maverick to confront and try to push back, try to neutralize, try to mitigate the excesses of the repressive state. You are not dealing with normal public administration. You need a leader who understands pushing narratives, who is schooled in dealing with media, legacy media, traditional media, who knows the tactics of engaging powerful people carrying guns, steeped in impunity. Uganda is no longer business as usual. It's no longer business as usual. Increasingly, the Museveni's dictatorship continues to strip naked and true its character as really a family rule. When we say military dictatorship, we are not even saying that the military is in charge. We are saying this is family rule running an army. So it is the military dictatorship of a small family that has its fangs that are all over. Chewing Ugandan money, chewing Ugandan lives, chewing Ugandan hopes, dashing their dreams, and at every time that Uganda is being, in the language of Stella Nyanzi, fact left, right, and center. Which of the three presidential candidates is going to at least provide hope for an antidote? When I look at the three, I see it's only Ssemakadde who understands the context of the military dictatorship in which we are in. Secondly, Uganda Law Society's primary law is to champion the rule of law. There are so many functions exist to execute, including borrowing money, but that's not for us to discuss here. It's primary law. It is champion rule of law. Rule of law is a big thing. It has around 9 ingredients that Rod Bingham articulated, and they are gold standard. But at the core of them is that law, not discretion, should underpin what government people should do. There should be equality and non-discrimination. There should be access to justice. There should be legal aid so that people do not are not financially alienated from justice. And there should be respect for international human rights obligations of the state, etc., etc. So, which of the three candidates do you think even has an inkling of rule of law beyond just blabbering the word out and saying it's not about including rule of law in your manifesto? It's not about making it part of your rhetoric. We want a leader who understands it. And only Isaac Ssemakadde of the three has shown a consistent, long-lasting track record. Yeah, of course, we disagree. Isaac and I disagree, and it's, in my opinion, brotherly disagreement. We are not meant to parrot each other's opinions. And again, I'm not going to judge him like Stella Furious, judge him on the fact that I think he could have been more involved in the protest, but it was his choice. And again, lawyers have every right to ask for money. This work is hard. This work calls for sacrifice. You cannot ask a lawyer to sacrifice on every case from January to December. We also have bills to pay, even if we are pro bono lawyers, and we have clients we ask money from, and we don't take all cases. So you have to choose, and the choice of which case to do freely is for the lawyer. It's not for the person who needs legal services. So we are not going to judge him. But of course, even Isaac is under no delusion that once about the task he's going to face, about the resistance, the establishment lawyers are already ganging up against him. And that's why also the human rights lawyers, the people who are interested in social justice, the people who are representing vulnerable people, lawyers for the downtrodden, it also behoves them to really come up and vote en masse. And once Isaac is in the seat, it's also our duty to hold him to account. The work of rule of law does not end in putting a rule of law champion in the position of law society president. It is one, to support him to execute the rule of law agenda, but also to keep eyes very widely open to ensure that should he try to tilt, to dither, to veer off, then we beat him on track.
Back on track.
Yes, we shall beat him back on track. Should he try to veer off, because this is our agenda, and it shall apply to everyone, including the good Isaac himself. Of course, people would want me to talk about a few personal issues. For example, you were talking about the Rwenzori Justice Mission. That was among the very early career things we did together. The Rwenzori people in 2014 were at the receiving end of state repression, and these were some of them were ordinary people, and government reacted in a cramwork style of how, for example, under Kigura, Muslims would all be rounded up. So the people of Kasese,
ADF.
yes, so the people of Kasese, simply because they seem to be very loyal to their king, which is not different from people of Uganda or even the Basoga who never had a king before independence, or people who, when they get kings, they want to ride around them. That's what the Bakonjo do, and they have a stubborn streak. They are very loyal to their people and causes. But that's not a reason to criminalize an entire tribe. Yes, there might be some criminals, there might be some suspects, but these random arrests of entire tribes, entire ethnicities, just don't cut it. And Isaac championed their cause. He organized us into the Rwenzori Justice Mission with the Wakafuzi. They flagged us off, and off I led the team to the Rwenzori Square, and we defended these people. And I'm happy that today she's Winnie, the former leader of opposition, recorded those efforts, and she has also formally endorsed Isaac for that reason. Isaac and I have confronted militarism in the courts when I stood around Nyakirima in 2013. And I met Isaac, I think, again at the ULS AGM and some other side effects. We interacted and our ideas were intersecting, and he became my lawyer. I filed it myself, and because he had written an op-ed, he was also anti-militarization of the state. We bought books from USA. We did a lot of research on militarization and military subordination to civilian authority, military neutrality, all those concepts. We are reading them, researching, and so on. So yes, I can confirm his work ethic. On a different matter, we were waking up, we were sleeping at 3 a.m., 2 a.m. on conservative days. It was a weekend. It's a matter I don't want to mention, but it was a rule of law matter. In fact, it was concerning Parliament and during the era of Kadaga. So his work ethic is exceptional. His energy levels are exceptional. Is he perfect? No. Of course, no one is going for a perfect leader. Clearly, even the other leaders are not perfect. But this is a man who really understands and has demonstrated loyalty to rule of law, loyalty to human rights. He is the person who, in a brigadier judiciary, a judiciary that has been denuded of its independence, he will at least speak up and speak back against those people who want to even take what is remaining, the vestiges of judicial independence in Uganda. He is a man who, if the young lawyers are listening, this is the man who has really a heart. I think I listened also to Ssemakadde, a man who has represented students of Ssemakadde. Before I started representing students in Ssemakadde, Isaac was there. You get me? Together we have represented many activists. The march to parliament process are not the first protesters. There have been many protesters, and Isaac has represented some of them. And of course, he has not represented some others, and that is his choice. But there is no taking away from the fact that he has a track record and a long track record of standing up for human rights, of activists, of journalists, of academics, of all sorts of people. We are in a digital era when we are the rest of the world is already in the AI era, but of course Uganda is still a bit stuck somewhere. But our digital rights are highly circumscribed and compromised. We are challenging digital rights laws, and which law society president will better understand the digital rights jurisprudence, the need for. He has represented there is a case he started of Karamaji, which I concluded, but he's almost started it. So we have worked together on some projects, and I know that he understands the digital rights, he understands all human rights, and he understands what is at stake in Uganda today. So let's vote him, well knowing that should he do that, we shall get him back on track. Thank you very much. Do you have any question?
Yeah, that was quite impressive. Thank you, Council. I want to urge the listeners that are tuning in tonight. You have advocates in your family, you have advocate friends who will be coming to Munyonyo to vote on Saturday. Please, the message is it is the time for the legal rebel to steer the Uganda Law Society. That is the message that is coming through. We have listened to testimonies for the last 3 hours and beyond from both advocates and non-advocates, former clients, colleagues who have worked with the legal rebel, Isaac Ssemakadde. Yeah, he's not perfect. None of us is, but they're saying this is his time. The situation that we are in right now requires somebody to bang the table. So I want to bring in Sulaiman Kakaire, and then I will go to Anthony and Pascal. Sulaiman Kakaire, I've kept you waiting for quite some time. Could you kindly unmute your mic and speak to us?
Yeah, thank you again, sir. Can you please hear me?
Sure.
Greetings, everyone on the space. Well, it was exciting to listen, colleagues, especially those we've gone through, those we've been together in the struggle, especially the strange guys. It was exciting to hear good testimonies and even their authenticity and accuracy, because almost 98% of the stories, testimonies shared in this space have been part and parcel of the struggle. Isaac Ssemakadde, a few days ago, we were talking and I was sharing with him, and we broke down, both of us, when we were on the call, trying to talk about most of these things and justifications as to why he should be made a president of Uganda Law Society. For the record, I have known Isaac for more than a decade. Our first time to meet, I think that Sam had just returned from my fellowship at the Times and Guardian UK, and I'd done also some stint at the BBC. I'd won the David Astor Award, and I was already a budding journalist, doing my work as a journalist, So one afternoon, it was a Saturday afternoon, Isaac came to the Observer newsroom. And when he came to the Observer newsroom, he was due to meet a colleague in the Observer newsroom who was working on a story he was interested in. Then they were interacting on a few things. Then he had my name, and basically a colleague introduced him to me, and he had read my work. By that time, I was writing for the Observer, where I worked for almost a decade. So we interacted. We started talking at around midday, and we ended up talking. We left Observer, then Kamocha. We walked that afternoon. We talked for almost 8 hours. We walked up to Teacher's House, back and forth. We discussed almost every subject: football, life, career, and everything. And since then, Isaac became my friend, and we started working together. So the following week, he called me in at Teacher's House to become a subject matter expert on freedom of expression at Teacher's House. And by that time, I had not completed law school. I was still at law school, but I was a journalist already established. But what drew us together, he was interested in the subjects. Especially, I partly introduced him to left-wing literature, particularly Marxism, and it's what basically brought us together. So during that time, I had battles with Parliament. For those who are following public issues, you remember I was a parliamentary reporter, and when I became critical in my reports against Parliament, about what Parliament people were doing, all these things people are talking about, big parks. I remember Dr. Spire Sentong shared some of the stories I'd already done, how budget of Parliament had moved from around 30 billion to almost 600, and I would explain detail to detail, explaining MPs' travels abroad. So when these battles were happening, Isaac starts to say, so Kaka, that's how he calls me, and he started calling me that. Then it became his name, Kaka. So he asked me, what is the grand strategy? By that time, I had a lawyer, Alan Mulindwa, who had been given to me by Fred Muema, who is also a homie and a colleague, a friend. So Isaac came up with a more grand plan of how can we push back against this, which we branded as stifling the press from reporting what is happening at Parliament. And we started working on I remember the first case was to file a case which was to do with the grey-haired journalist. That case basically involved Parliament was interested. Parliament wanted to push away journalists who had been there for more than 3 years to 5 years. Actually, it was 5 years. If you had reported Parliament for more than 5 years, they wanted you out because you were critical. You had access, and indeed, people like me had access. I would know.
And some of you, by the way, some of you were accused of even going into intimate relations with the members of Parliament.
That I'm not very sure. I had colleagues who had. I had colleagues. I had those stories, and indeed I know some of the stories. So you would know. I mean, there is one of the those. I will not mention all the stories, but you would know even what is going on in the appointments committee before a result comes. You are interested in caucus, everything the run-ins. So Isaac says, but Keke, why don't we come up with an open Parliament campaign? We walked and he engaged me on the subject. We debated. We debated. By the way, people who think Isaac is not consultative and is not engaging, Isaac is someone you will debate with an idea consistently for even more than 3 days.
No, I support you. I've engaged him on discussions late into the night for 3 hours on the phone.
Yes. So I remember that time, and he said, well, you have your contacts. He started asking me, so which kind of people can we talk to about this? We started to engage guys at Media Legal Defense Initiative London. We reached out to many donor agencies. Because he had brought me in, I started even offering opinions about some of the cases he was working on, which were freedom of expression. And I don't remember the time we engaged, and I would leave not at midnight, because this is a freak who would be in up to midnight on a Saturday, a Sunday. The first time I was with him and we were working on Dr. Stella Nyanzi's appeal in Ginger, and we were listening to hip hop. I told Isaac, so you guys, this is stuff I thought you are not interested in. But I mean, I felt like whenever I see him being free and listening to stuff, living his youthful years, I would remember what he has gone through to establish what people now are calling a career and a testimony of legacy. So when we started debating, we debated. I even told my lawyer then, Alan Mulindwa, that I would want Isaac to take on some of these matters. We started working on 1, 2, 3 cases. The gray-haired case. We came up with another which was challenging the introduction of the degree requirement. By the way, Parliament thought I didn't have a degree, so they were shocked when they said, we are pushing out guys, and the Mackay graduate is there with a degree. And they had, he's doing a second one. They said, okay, gray-haired guys. The gray-haired international student and most of them, the Nandutus didn't have degrees. So they said, okay. I remember introducing then the leadership of Parliament, Uganda Parliament Reporters Association, to Isaac, and even handsomely paid for their lunch. I remember Joseph Sabiti, Isaac Imaka, Nandutu, Joseph Kajangu.
Joseph Sabiti was in this space earlier on. I remember seeing him.
Yes, and I told them, this is the guy you guys need. I know most of you didn't walk with me the journey of challenging Parliament. You felt like you were privileged. In this society, some journalists covering Parliament, they think it's a privilege. So the Kakaire protesting, and indeed, for the record, I would go back to that Parliament without even going to court. For those who knew already my relationship with the people leading Parliament and other things. But I said I have to stand up for the idea that media is treated as a stranger in this institution. That's what is provided for under the Administration of Parliament Act of 1950s. So with Isaac, we worked on several cases. And indeed, when court made its pronouncement in the case, its ruling, the decision in the case of Suleiman Kakai versus Parliamentary Commission in 2015, Isaac organized, said that this is the climax. Kaka, we have to start the Open Parliament Initiative. And with the Open Parliament Initiative now, we engage in many activities that will make the media more stronger in Parliament. First came through with the funding, that is Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. So when I read one of the reports that Isaac is not wanted at first, that he took people's money, I was shocked. We received the money. I was working with Marvin Sassi, me and Isaac. I remember one of the days I was even sick, but Isaac came to the sick bay, and we worked through to make sure that the campaign is done. Professor Joe Lokonyango gave the address, people discussed. And indeed, there is a way to embolden some of the journalists at Parliament who started now to realize that we are dealing with the monster. But this monster, we have to attack it full circle. And Isaac helped so much in doing that. So since then, we worked also on another case of opening the vetting process at Parliament. On the first Open Parliament Initiative campaign, I talked to one of my colleagues, Dr. Spire Sentongo, in 2015. And he did for us a cartoon at zero cost. At zero cost. I brought together Isaac with Spire. I brought together Isaac with people like Yusuf Serunkuma, who was my best man. So we started working on some of these things. And at times, most of the times I'm at pains when I see them falling out over small petty things, which is basically a matter of ideology and strategy, but not that there is hate and love. So we worked and solid on through those years. We started labor justice. There was a campaign to start labor justice. So the Stellar's cases start to come in when we are going through real battles of where some of the colleagues at Center for Legal Aid and Legal Brains Trust are saying, well, guys, we are working on these things, but we don't have money. We don't have this. People were crying over lunch. People are crying over things. And Isaac is a pushy guy. He's a guy who would tell you, we have to work. And then the next thing you see, the guy brings a donut with tea, and you've not had lunch. And I loved that. I love it so much. But because of our poor work ethic, some Ugandans would not realize that the guy you're saying is exploiting you is going on a
He's helping you to build your
career. This boy is broke. This boy is broke. This is what the Gesa people are missing. Exactly. And most of the cases he worked on, it was not working for money. It was not working for money. And so, but there is something that Stella talked about, which I wanted also to elaborate more on, about debate and strategy. I sat in that meeting where we are discussing the strategy over the Stella cases, and by that time I was one of the few people who was quite still objective and had not yet taken aside. Meeting attended by Nicholas, Isaac, Andrew Karamaji, Sheila, Aaron, and I see the disagreement over strategy. So when we were walking out, when we leave the meeting, and Isaac asked me, so Kaka, what do we do? And I said, Isaac, I see ego. You are all in the same age bracket. You're fighting over who is the big guy. Let's introduce Peter Walubiri. And he says, are you serious? I called Peter. And we met Peter. Everyone was there. We had spent almost 6 hours at court. And I said, why? He asked me why Peter. And I said, Justice, His Worship Elemie, I know he's related to Peter. He will have some level of fear. And I said, let's go and meet Peter. We met Peter at almost 7. I gave it to Peter, senior lawyer, very highly respected, and he says, I'm ready to give you time, my sons. And he listened to us. We introduced Peter. We debated over Peter. There was another candidate, senior lawyer, who had been proposed by Sheila. I'll not mention his name. And we gave the pros and cons of why was not the best. And we, at the end of the day, after visiting Stella at prison, Isaac came back to me and said Stella's okayed it. I wouldn't meet Stella then because Stella wasn't happy with some of the stories I'd written about Maiza and Mamdani, which I respected so much, but because I was interested in the causes, not our personal disagreements. So what I saw through all those engagements was a person who would debate and consult. But when you're mediocre, and when you're not very, there is a way you like.
No, when you're not confident in your
from Isaac,
Isaac,
because the guy is brutal. The guy is brutal. He's brutal.
I know
And
him.
if you're an intellectual, you will engage him, and he will engage you. So we eventually worked and worked. I saw fallouts. They needed testimonies. I remember when we reached out to Professor Tamale. Isaac couldn't go. I went with Dr. Now is a Dr. Bwesige Wamwesgile, Brian. We reached out to several people to testify in Stella's cases. I was the first witness when some of these things Stella is talking about happened. Feminists, we worked with some feminists who were not ready to walk the journey Stella had started. And I feel Isaac would not relent, even when he would continuously be attacked by some people who would reach out to Stella and tell her, please drop Isaac, because we don't need Isaac. But Isaac, whenever Isaac would talk to me and I would tell him one thing, Isaac, this is not about friendship. It's not about what. It's about the cause. And he'll say, yes, finally I have someone
let me tell you
in what I think.
Let me tell you something. There's a friend of mine, a former classmate at university, whose spouse happened to be a workmate and a friend to Stella. So at one point when we were discussing about Stella Nyanzi's cases, and I asked them where is the strength, and they told me actually we are confident because she has Isaac on.
Okay, sir, did I lose you?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah. So they were confident because they had Isaac, and they were saying he's not in.
Okay. Are you still continuing?
Yes. Anthony, you're coming in shortly. I just wanted Sulaiman to conclude, and then you'll come in shortly.
Yeah. So let me conclude because I've been part and parcel of most of these testimonies. The same member I saw it live. We worked on UCU. By the way, on UCU, we launched a big campaign about UCU, and we wrote even a project for Legal Brains Trust. Legal Brains Trust is the NGO. Center for Legal Aid is the legal clinic.
Okay.
But we would reach out to most of the donor agencies that right now are being styled as promoting good governance in Uganda and better social movements. Most of them, they would turn us away. I remember even when Malema Birizi filed his petition, Isaac called me out and we reached out to several people. I remember Peter, while we were driving us in his car, me, Isaac, and Malema Birizi to go ask for some funding. But some of these people, and the funding, how much was it? Like 2 million to aid Mabilis to photocopy and do things, because we felt like he had a more solid petition than the other petitioners. And some of these donors would turn us
The age
away.
limit petition?
The age limit petition.
Oh, okay.
The one which was filed in Imbali.
Yes.
I remember Segirinya, at times we would plan how to throw pigs at Parliament, sit through the night with Isaac. With Isaac. You know, when people talk French work.
Now that I didn't know.
Oh my God. Most of the things. And at times I would even see Aaron coming in. Aaron, after his work at Meresa, he would come in and we have some engagements over some of, and we would disagree over strategy with Isaac on many matters. But he would continuously, he's a guy you would have a quarrel with this night. And in the morning calls you Kaka. Turumbe mwana office. Turumbe. And you would see him at his lowest. When he loses a debate and he feels like justice is being lost, he starts crying. And there is that weakness as well, which is not a weakness per se.
It's quite passionate.
Someone, passionate. One of the female lawyers slapped him at court at Buganda Road, and he even cried.
Oh no!
And he said, over Stella's case. I said, Isaac, don't lose track. And he said, I will not lose track. My client is Stella. I would see even people like Aaron break down emotionally when Isaac would say some things and they would emotionally break down. There is a time they would not talk, Aaron and Isaac, and I continue to talk to both. But I love the passion and focus of both gentlemen, that they remained colleagues throughout. And this is a testimony to someone like Isaac, that he can even be able to work with some of the officers people are talking about, because Isaac is not interested in personalities, he's interested in issues. Tomorrow, if Kiriowa works on what Isaac is talking about, Honorable Kiriowa Chiwanka, Isaac is a person who will go even to hug with him. That is Isaac I know. He say, guys, okay, let's do the Kola Nut experience. Let's move on. That is Isaac. It's about issues.
I think you've given us a very good account. Yeah. You've given us a very good account. And
On the last one, Mr. Gessa, on FIDA, I have testimony. We received the instructions from FIDA, not one, not twice, not thrice. I personally would write press releases of FIDA, and Isaac are the one giving them to me.
Wow.
Press releases, cases, that Isaac Ssemakadde.
Wow.
That Isaac Ssemakadde. Appearing in the Basaja Baraba case, there is a time, even someone would talk to us and say, Isaac, can you guys, there is something, which was like a suggestion of something. And when I say something, you know what I mean. But Isaac would say, the morals, I don't know. Most of the times these things are emotional. But, and let me tell you for the record still, 5 years ago, I asked Isaac and Aaron, even Aaron is on the space, he can testify. I asked both of those gentlemen, who of you is interested in ULS? I talked to Isaac Saidi Kaka. I have an NGO to look after. I have a law firm. We have to work on this. Aaron, the same thing. Uganda Law Society needs Isaac more than he needs it. Because I know for sure that even when he becomes president, they are likely to create blockades. But the conversation Isaac will open at Uganda Law Society is a redefinition of culture. The culture of after Isaac, who next? Because it's a 1 year mandate, 2 year mandate. But after him setting the standards, the next, I know we have to work with Stella. With Stella, you have to make calls and make person like Aaron Kiza, the next president. After them, it will be completed. The culture will be different.
Perfect.
And I know these gentlemen, they mean good for Uganda. Because throughout this entire struggle, Isaac has had opportunities, but he would turn them down.
Sure.
He wanted to turn down the FD's appointment. And I remember him talking to me that you've been appointed by Muntu. How come you're telling me to be appointed by Amriat? And I said, that is a testimony to what you've done. These guys sitting at Najanankumbi and making a decision that you should become their lawyer. It's testimony to what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, but that's what I think. And lastly, as a left-wing activist, I introduced him to new ideas of Marxism, and Isaac was willing to take them on.
Yeah.
So when someone says, a leader who can't listen is a dictator.
No, I know for sure that
Isaac
listens,
listens.
but you have to be confident.
Isaac listens.
And he will listen to you.
Isaac listens. Listening to a deconstructionist, a Nietzschean scholar like Stella, and understanding what she's talking about. Because what Stella talks about, actually, if you're not elevated in academic awareness, particularly cultural studies and sexuality, you're likely not to understand what she's talking about. But Isaac went through a learning process. For the record, to clarify, it wasn't Stella who learned Isaac. It was Isaac who was able to learn.
True.
To read Stella and understand. That can't be done by someone who is just saying, I know it all.
No.
I don't know how many times we've gone to Kalundi Sserumaga. I took him to Kalundi Sserumaga. But all the time, even when you are not available, Isaac would call you and say, do you know what? Comrade, let's go to Kalundi. And I'll say, Isaac, I introduce you, go to Kalundi. You have something bothering you, go there.
Kalundi Sserumaga.
Thank you, Egesa. I mean, colleagues want to give testimonies. But I, as a person who votes in Uganda Law Society, I endorse Isaac. For 2 years, I've not been on TV, but last Friday, I had to be on TV for persons talking about a good human being. He's not perfect, but no one is perfect. Isaac can only work better if we are ready to support him. We have to be there, walk that journey with him. Thank you so much, my brother.
Yeah, that is quite impressive, Sulaiman. Yeah, thank you. Let me bring in...
Hi, Egesa.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead. Then, after Anthony, I'll have Onyango.
Someone tell me they can hear me because
we can hear you. Go ahead.
I think I can't hear Egesa.
We can hear you. Go ahead. Anthony?
Aaron, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Anthony.
Anthony, we can hear you. Please proceed. Clearly, you can't hear.
I am
we can hear you.
I'm getting you. Please,
can you hear me?
Speak. Yes. Maybe he's not hearing us.
Okay, so I will assume people are hearing me, and I'll just talk about the Isaac I know. If you stop hearing me, just give me a thumbs down. I can't hear anything. So a lot of you might be wondering why this pharmacist, a cancer pharmacist, a businessman, and looks confused is supporting Isaac. But I've known Isaac, or at least known about Isaac, from the 90s. So I grew up in Seta. I went to primary school in Seta Church of Uganda. We didn't grow up very rich. Those days, our aspirations were to perform really well in class and, get to a good traditional secondary school. You're thinking Namiryango, Smak, Budo, those schools, Chivuli, So we really had to hustle. And those days, being top of the country in exams, national exams, was a big deal. You had a litany of journalists coming to your house to, interview you. So the first time I knew about Isaac was in the national newspapers after we were in the same cohort after our primary leaving exams. Both of us were some of the top 10 students in the country. I was the best student in Mukono. He was in Bright Grammar with 3 other guys. They came out there with, stellar grades. So somehow you have those people on your radar. He went to Chisubi, I went to Namilyango. Still some of the best students in the country. Senior 4, I think Isaac was the best student in the country that year. Senior 6, he was the best science student in the country. I was probably the second or the third. I don't quite remember. We go to university, we know about Isaac. So we're in that cohort. I went to University Hall. He was in Mitchell. He was in that cohort with people like Joseph Opio. I think you guys know Joseph Opio from The Daily
Sure.
Show. Bruce Musinguzi, that brilliant lawyer at KAA. Jude Biamkama. Everyone knows Jude Biamkama. So they had a really impressive law school class. So they would spend a lot of time in the UH quadrangle from first year, really, arguing. From a moment law class ends, they would walk to the UH quadrangle and just have arguments up to like 11 p.m. And the arguments were as passionate as you see them now. Very animated. I would come in there, I was studying pharmacy, but after my moonlighting, or I would come in and just enjoy time with them and just listen to them. That's how I picked up a lot of legal jargon. And it was such a spectacle seeing these guys get so animated and push back and quarrel and go back angry, then come back tomorrow hugging like nothing happened and start from there. It was always a contestation of ideas. So when I see a lot of people say, Isaac can't be trusted, Isaac, why is he so angry? Why is he acting a certain way? Because that's how the guy is. He's as passionate as they come. He believes, he feels every emotion. And when it comes to injustice, he really extra feels these emotions. And you can see it. He will talk about a concept in the law and actually cry. So anyway, we finished school. I studied pharmacy, ended up in cancer pharmacy. But today is not for talking about myself. Went into business after a brief detour in the US. And my first interaction with Isaac, the lawyer, was when I wanted to sue, I think it was KCB Bank, that changed a lot of the way they were clearing checks. And, because we businessmen at the time, you're living from one check to another. If a bank changes the way it clears checks by 2 days, even if that check doesn't bounce and charges you a bounce check fee, you have a problem. So I go to Isaac. I didn't have a lot of money. The business was still struggling. And we review the matter. He breaks it down so well, writes a plaint, and then says, go to my other friend at Bowman's. And we go, we toy with the idea of suing the bank. But then he comes back and says, what's the actual win for you? Will you feel so excited if you get a lot of money, or do you just want to fix this problem so that other people do not have to worry about, getting shafted by banks? And quite frankly, I hadn't thought about that problem. I was just angry and I wanted compensation. When I went back, I'm like, I need to think about this. So I go to the lawyer he had sent me to, Carl Lebrun, the head of litigation at Bowman's, where actually Isaac had already worked. He held people like Daudi Mpanga and Carl Lebrun in that firm in very high regard. He still does, by the way. So we had a conversation and we're like, actually, what I want is redress for this issue so that people who are coming after me don't suffer it. If we had gone ahead with the lawsuit, I am 100% sure would have got the bank to pay back at least billions of shillings from that thing. So from that point, I realized that this man's approach to the law is not monetary. It's actually about fairness. So our ways parted. I really became a capitalist. He went into, public interest litigation and was excellent at it. Then later, when I exited a bit of capitalism and chose to start Public Square, I started reconnecting with him fully as a friend and just learning from him as a person. And then one time we landed on like 3 cases that required following up on people who had looted billions of shillings in corruption rackets. I'm not at liberty to talk about them now, but he comes through and says, well, we had a friend online. There's a friend and a colleague called Trevor Maholi, who was as leftist. I think he's more leftist than Sulaiman, which is saying something. So he actually loathed Isaac. He thought he was eccentric. He thought he wasn't a nice guy. He was too brash. Yes, he's brilliant, but he's just not the kind of guy you want to spend time with. So I'm like, when we're trying to think through within the law, how to approach a certain case that's rotating around recovering more than 50 billion shillings of stolen public money, I say, well, I know my friend Isaac. Let's go with him. Let's go to him, and he helps us go through this case. We didn't warn him when we were showing up. We didn't tell him what case we were going to go for. So we show up, and he calls us to his apartment somewhere in Bukoto. No, Kitante Road, I think. So we sit down. He was preparing for this multi-billion case, Basa Jabalaba case that brought him back into the country. Again, those cases, he doesn't get paid for them. He does them for free. So we sit down. He had a Supreme Court appearance. Oftentimes when lawyers have Supreme Court appearances, like a lot of lawyers, you'll ask them how many times they've appeared in the Supreme Court. Lawyers who have practiced for 40 years, and some of them will say no. This guy had a Supreme Court appearance the next day. He had a bunch of books, and here we are, street guys, asking him for help, and he dropped everything. He told his assistant, I have people who need to understand the law. They've come here with a problem. They want to recover 50 billion. I need to show them how to do it. So, he went to work. The guy has an encyclopedic memory of the law. It was so unbelievable for my two colleagues. For me, I kind of had an idea because I'd interacted with him right from the time he was in law school. But even for me, who kind of expected it, was stunned that we came to this guy unprepared. We hadn't warned him. And he just keeps reciting laws line for line for line for line. And given the amount of money online that Public Square is trying to recover, we thought, Isaac is going to ask us for maybe at least $1,000 for spending that entire day of his time. He just said, no, I want to help you. I actually think you guys should do an MOU with us. We go after these bad guys. We think we can recover up to 1 trillion shillings over the next 10 years for the Ugandan taxpayer. I do not care about money. I just want to see good. And Trevor, who had gone to that meeting, kind of worried. I had to drag him there. Now is the biggest disciple of Isaac, the Isaac gospel. He calls, people who know Isaac will know, I don't know if he sleeps. He will call you at 1 a.m. to have a conversation about the law. And when you see Isaac's call, you just know that call is going to go for 4 hours.
I
And
know.
he will teach you stuff. He will say, okay, do you have a pen and paper there? Yes. I also have a pen and paper on my side. So let's learn from each other. And then he will get into an almighty lecture. You will leave that place feeling renewed. You will feel like you can conquer the world. He will go through the nitty-gritties of the law, of human rights. He will reference cases he has done with people like Stella without divulging, obviously, private information. He will go into the principles. I think he worships Stella. He will go into principles and just break down the law for you, and you'll feel like you can teach that concept in law school. Yes, he thinks through things from first principles. I have never seen a first principle thinker. You will come to him so heated with a belief, so heated with something, so angry, and he will share your anger. Then turn the person you're angry about into a human. He will humor them before the law and say, look, this person is probably a bad person, but here is how they find footing in the law. Now, to the extent that they find footing in the law, how can you counter them using the law and keeping your emotions on the side? And I have not met people who think like that they will humanize someone they disagree with to the extent that you'll think, why don't you two get a room? But he's that kind of person. I do not know if Isaac has enemies. If he comes railing against the Attorney General and people go like, oh my God, he's a fierce guy. How will he work with the AG? Let me tell you something. That man will work with the AG in a very respectful way. And none of you guys, none of those fearmongers will come back and say, we are sorry. And unfortunately, he's not the kind of person who will come back and collect receipts and remind you. Now, I see a lot of people, we have the decorum crowd. I feel
Anthony, can you hear me?
like a lot of people who are pushing that, in private, they have not met a better legal mind than Isaac. They will wax lyrical about him. They will tell you how they've worked with
That
him.
is correct.
Tell you how they've
I
gone to
have
his
said the
house,
same.
sat there for hours and learned from him. They will cancel meetings that we have and say, Isaac has called, he has 2 hours for me, I need to go and talk to them. But then when you see these people diss him online, some of us do not understand it because it looks like some sort of schizophrenic existence. We have our lives online, our work is online, and then we have our real lives where we interact with this guy and learn from him, then come back the next morning and diss him and call him all sorts of names. If he brought out receipts against those people, all of you guys would be shocked. The people who are criticizing him, he has worked with them, he has cried with them, the same way Stella and Suleiman describe him, crying because of them. But unfortunately, they are the ones who are pushing the decorum gospel, while knowing that the man is decorous. He actually is extremely decorous. He wears his heart on his sleeve and he believes in the fight he's taking on. He's a guy who will tell you if something is not worth dying for, it is not worth doing. That is an actual statement from him. So if such a person tells you, I'm going to fight, what is decorum for him if his basement is his lack of fear of death because he believes in something? So I feel like the society misunderstands the man. And I don't know whether words alone can sanitize him. I feel like a combination of his work and really the people who are pushing this decorum gospel, coming out and facing the reality that, you know what, I am just playing to the gallery, but I know the measure of the man. I have been toying with the idea of coming out with receipts and going like, you keep saying this about the man in private, but when it comes to public, you hang him out to dry. It's not fair, but it's really human nature, and it has driven a very false narrative. When I listen to Dr. Nyanzi talk about Isaac's work on the feminist front, and then you square that with how he was roasted because at law school, he called out the person who frankly accused him of sexual harassment. He said, no, come out here, stand beside me, give me this accusation. This is a law student. In law, you have a right and the expectation to face your accuser, and the reverse is true. People caricatured it as this scary man who has no respect for people who are complaining about abuse. For the cameras, when the cameras were on, they were all riled up. When the cameras went off, we went outside, stood with these people for hours, and one-on-one, Trevor was in that conversation, he will attest to this. There were other law students, some females who were in that conversation, they will attest to this. The people who were accusing him on camera, the people who went to Twitter to accuse him, the people who shared those videos, came out there and said, actually, we've worked with Isaac. When School Fees Must Fall campaign came around, Suleiman referenced it on when he was talking about Wesige. When the School Fees
said
Must
other
Fall
people
campaign
before
came
Sulaiman.
around,
Actually, Anthony,
Mm.
for the record, there is a lady who was part of the leading that campaign, Mole Speria. She came to law school during the Maclean Law Society debate, the one we attended last
and gave
week,
him $1 million
and
shillings
she
and
was
didn't
just
tell
there.
him
She
anything.
had come to give the testimony. Not at all. Not at all. She came back from Nairobi. So
Speria,
I mean,
that
people.
lady, I was there. We were actually having that conversation outside. That lady walked to Isaac, handed him $1 million shillings, and said nothing. And just said, I
Wow,
hope you
wow,
win.
wow,
That is the
wow.
biggest individual donation he had gotten to his campaign. She said, Isaac, I hope you win. Now, the people who were in conversation with had been in the School Fees Must Fall campaign, a lot of those females. Some of them were accusing him before the cameras of not responding to that girl's question, which girl later disappeared and didn't give him a chance to answer her directly. She said, I picked that banter on Twitter. I have no proof.
Exactly.
But the narrative had been shaped and shared by thousands of people. Okay, so we stand outside. These same girls go like, oh, actually there's one candidate who is not Isaac in that group whose law firm has accusations of sexual harassment. Here are the chats. We have this evidence. We haven't come out. But Isaac should have answered that girl politely. But these people also know Isaac wears his heart on his sleeve. He came out and said, doctrinally, any accusation, whether male or female harassment, allow it to follow due process. That was his primary answer. And anyone who knows Isaac knows he's a doctrinal thinker. But they also know that they can easily trigger him because he wears his heart on his sleeve. Now, back to the conversation outside. Trevor can speak to it. Two of the girls, I hope they're on here. I've seen them on some of the spaces of Isaac's. They said, when we were in the School Fees Must Fall campaign, the person we would run to when we had sexual harassment issues was Isaac. Some of us would sleep on the floor of his house. He never ever made a single advance. And then they said one of us actually threw herself to him. He never made an advance. He was the most respectful attorney we had worked with. And no one can ever accuse Isaac of sexual harassment. So then I'm like, but you have stood up and actually pinned him on the floor when you know in cameras are rolling. Why would you do that? How are you going to undo that damage? I got no answer. And it was about how he responded. Now, so when Dr. Stella Nyanzi comes, a person as respectable as her comes and says, this man found a way to make a feminist argument when the Ugandan legal jurisprudence had run out of options for me. This man stood in the gap both for me as a female and for my dead child. In a time when feminists denied me, they called me a postmenopausal woman who cannot possibly have gotten pregnant. But he believed me, he has no vagina, he has no uterus. But he empathized and he understood that I'm telling him the truth and I need help. That a man who does not possess a uterus, who does not have reproductive capabilities that women possess, can somehow sit and fashion out a solution for that person, tells you everything you need to know about the man's feminist credentials. It's not about the razzmatazz, the show. It's about the actual work. When people push him to list the feminist jurisprudence he has contributed to Uganda's legal landscape, how much of his work has contributed to Uganda's feminist jurisprudence, he shies away. But if he starts to list, you will have like 5 hours.
No, I was doing a
He's a
research.
shy guy.
Anthony.
A lot of, I think, how he acts when you meet him in private and when you meet him in public, a lot of what people tend to consider theatrics, I think hides a certain level of shyness. But what it doesn't hide is the passion. He's a passionate person. Don't nail him for the passion. Nail him using the body of work. These people that Isaac is running against, good people. Especially I know Kenneth Kipalo. He's an upstanding dude. But I would not remotely get them to lace Isaac's legal boots. You would need 2 lifetimes of performance for both of them combined, and you would not get to half the work that man has done. So if the Law Society wants someone who understands Uganda's history, he can tell you Uganda's history from its nascent stages. The same way he would come and beat the entire country in
Good evening,
science.
Mr. Gesa.
Good evening. Just hold on.
He will tell you the history of the country going back hundreds of years. Like he knows it like he knows the back of his hands. He will connect it to the law. So oftentimes, a lot of people will come and say, oh, Isaac is talking about abolishing LDC. Isaac is talking about abolishing this. Isaac is talking about abolishing this. He is not a lunatic. That man has
No,
thought about it doctrinally. He
no,
can
Isaac is a man of
explain it
letters.
from
He's a
first
man of letters.
principles. He can tell you how the Law Society and the legal profession was fashioned to separate Ugandan intelligentsia from the locals so that they create a reified class of aristocrats and insulate them from the masses. He's coming back and saying, guys, I come from the aristocracy. I have beaten these guys in class. I am brilliant. I am bringing news of freedom. I am going to unify the downtrodden with the aristocracy and form a country that works for all of us. That's the kind of man we are looking at. And you know what? Look at the people who are trying to oppose him. A lot of them are people who have just gotten into privilege. They are only ring fencing their eating trough. They're not thinking about expanding the reach of that bread to reach all lawyers, to reach all Ugandans. A man is saying, I am coming, I am bringing news of freedom premised on the law. And they are scared and they are driving fear. You cannot be scared of him.
Anthony,
Isaac will disagree with you. He has roasted me on the TL. We
Anthony,
all know that. He will come out fiercely, call me
Anthony,
out,
can you hear
but
me?
he calls me out on principle. He will finish calling me out, and I will call him, and it will be like we didn't quarrel at all. He'll be like, "Nakuochezamu, naye this is why nakuocheza, naye wanjochezamu, this is why this is where I think you are right. How do we move forward?" And you move on like nothing happened. So if I start talking about Isaac, I will talk till morning because I have not met someone who likes teaching for free like that man does. When we want to file matters of public square, he will, like Dr. Stella said, he knows I have maybe a bit of resources, not a lot, but he knows I do have a bit of resources. He will just tell me, you know what, Tony? I need like 50,000 to send my PA to file. I need 100,000 for this. I need 200,000 for that. And he will do all the work. You send him 200,000, 300,000. You feel ashamed because you paid lawyers 20 million, 50 million, $50,000 for agreements. And he comes around and says, no. Tony, if Bodi would have sent a vote because you're giving it to lawyers, you're going to run out of money and your fight for a better society will die because you have no money. Just send me 200,000. Let's do the work. And he gets the work done in a timely manner. He once filed a court of appeal plaint. He worked on a few court of appeal plaints in our presence in like a day, and we were ready. He's incredible. I do not know.
Can you hear
I
me?
do not know. But if Law Society misses out on this guy, they
Anthony,
would shot the
Anthony,
public in the back.
Anthony, you can tell people how much is required to file a court of appeal matter, especially if you're working with the top tier firms, because I know you have instructed.
Yes,
some of
that
them.
is a month.
And I'll
That
tell
is
you,
a
like
month.
for example, we worked on Stella's appeal. We had a budget of 500,000. He just called me Kaka, ngenda n'abaana tugenda Jinja. Join us on the
Obambali.
field. We
Two
go
of those places.
and on a small budget. You say, but I mean, how are we going to sustain people if we are going to sleep in hotel? And he would just say, we shall mobilize the money. Let's go. Then you call Obaze Kuketa, and there's another lady, Isabella, and we move. And the appeal is done. And the
Yes.
other lawyers, you would tell them, and they'll say, for me, I want 2 million to be left at home. But you're not making the law work for the poor. Isaac makes the law work for the poor.
Anthony, can you hear me? Hello? Anthony, can you hear me?
Many of these high-flying lawyers who are dissing him. That man is an encyclopedia of the law.
Trevor,
Even you, his fellow lawyer, are in awe.
but Anthony seems
He
to
will
hear
sit
me.
there, and you just bring out any doctrine, and he will take you to India and recite. He will recite a Supreme Court judgment and say, on this page, this guy said this and this and this, and we have borrowed this principle in Uganda's jurisprudence. It's like this and this and this. In the UK, it was like this, and you will go back and read it, and it is exactly what he said. Now, I understand why he will reduce the process of filing very expensive suits into hours, and it almost looks like an inconvenience. Like, I want to talk to you as an individual and find.
Sorry, I accidentally muted everyone. Anthony, kindly unmute your mic and see if you can hear me.
You had muted me.
Yeah.
He is as incredible
Yeah.
as they come. And
No, I wanted
I
to.
do not want to waste any more of your evening.
Yeah, I wanted
But
to.
if I talk about Isaac for long, I get emotional.
No, there's just
He
one question
is
I wanted to put to you.
who he thinks he is, honestly.
Anthony, there's just one question I wanted you to conclude with. Yeah. How do you see, in maybe 1 or 2 lines, how do you see the ULS performing?
I submit a guess.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. And let me bring in Onyango. Onyango has been waiting for some time, and then I'll have Nkubi Pascal. Onyango, just a few minutes, like 2-3 minutes, and then I'll bring in Nkubi.
Yes, thank you very much, Egisa. Am I audible?
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, I am Onyango. I am one of the luxury protesters, as people like to call us, and I am also a carpenter by profession.
I didn't know that there was such a thing as luxury protester.
It has been a common term and an interesting one, but it's true. I am a luxury protester in the sense that I protect for my future luxury. That is why I protest.
Okay.
I want to speak about Isaac. Everyone has spoken about Isaac. They've had personal encounters. Well, I don't know. I've been on a sabbatical off X for a while, but I was forced to come back on track personally for this particular space.
Interesting. Yes.
Because everything that is going on in the country right now is out of decorum. I mean, it is not usually heard of. It has not been a case that on such a night at such a time we would have carpenters, pharmacists, doctors, and lawyers here discussing who is going to succeed the president of Uganda Law Society. So anyone that thinks things are supposed to go normal is the abnormal one. The new normal is Isaac's type. The new normal is us, you know. And I guess I will tell you. People say I don't like Isaac because of this. I like Isaac because of this. I don't like half of you on this space. Some are snobbish, some are very argumentative, vindictive, but it's not about liking. It's about getting the job done. And I think, personally, as a person who has been to the street, to prison, and who expects to even go back because I have not achieved the country I want, I would really want the president of Uganda Law Society banging the fucking table. And as a carpenter, I promise to repair all the tables Isaac banks.
No, you said we are not cracking the tables, we are just banging them.
My brother, I earlier said it on my timeline that we give Isaac here this time. He's been banging the table before. We are giving him a bigger table to bang on.
Okay, perfect.
So that is just about it. At a time where Isaac, as everyone has been attesting, the rest of us are going to trust him. I sent out thousands of emails to lawyers during the March to Parliament protest asking for support. I'm doing the same this evening just for Isaac. We shall carry the table and put it on his head if he does not deliver. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, let me have Pascal, and from Pascal I'll move to Milton and then Ashana.
Okay, thank you. Can I be heard?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to thank you, Ronald, for organizing this and all my predecessors. Dr. Stella, your testimonies were really good. Council Aaron Kiza, that was also really good. I missed out on an opportunity to actually work with him last year during one of my immigration matters. Anthony, that was really good. Semuemba, perfect. And surely this is quite a good one. Just to make mine brief, one of the reasons I'm actually endorsing and supporting Ssemakadde, I don't necessarily have very many testimonies in light of what I've done for him as a lawyer, but his ability to be flexible, his ability to accommodate new ideas, and then to also factor in the generation, like I always say, for me, 40 years and below, you're still a young lawyer. 50 and above, yes, you're fit to give advice, and perhaps posture around, we shall understand. So for me, Ssemakadde's ability to transition himself, I relate him to, I think, the lawyers, many of you have done jurisprudence, and during this time, I'm actually sensing there's a very big need. I think variety of the lawyers need to be taken back for jurisprudence classes, because some of the colleagues I see on Twitter and everywhere, I am wondering why they're keeping the public out. I am wondering why they are so disturbed by Ssemakadde's decorum and his mode of expressing himself, if at all they really undertook jurisprudence classes. So for me, I just look at all that and I say, well, the public may not understand, but the voters who are going to vote on Saturday, I hope they are able to sieve and cut out all of that and then focus on the primaries, or focus on what is important, what Isaac is going to deliver. Personally, I've been around for a while. Someone just texted and said, in a minute, just introduce yourself. I have some hobbies on the space here and there. I've seen the likes of Silver right from when they were at law school, go through LDC. I was at LDC during the time with Lewis Rubogoya and all of that. I've been there. I did a diploma in law. I did a degree in psychology. I did a diploma in human rights. I did a degree in law. I've been quite there. To me, I've worked in law firms, but I've worked with the best person I think I could have ever worked with. That is Senior Counsel Godfrey Serunkumalule, the founding member of your present day Sevaluandule or S&L. 92 years, I think, old today. I was his personal legal assistant for about, I think, 6 or 7 years. I've learned quite a lot. And why do I bring in that example? Many of the people, with all due respect, many of the senior counsel we then see who are, I would say, booming or are there. These are the names we're actually fronting, 50 years and above. I've had the opportunity of this senior counsel who was in Amin's regime and Uganda's first minister of justice, who has actually sat me down and given me a history of the times before. A person who has mentored the chief justices we've had. He is so liberal that he understands where the generation 40 years and below, where we are coming from. and is able to say, look here, I cannot give you advice. The best gift I can ever give you as a young lawyer is to enable you to independently think for yourself, make a decision, listen to all the advice, but think for yourself as a person. And in the legal field, you need to network, but also always do or go with what you think not only makes you better, but also makes others in your profession better. That is Isaac Ssemakadde for me. I think I haven't seen him in a while. His humility is exhibited for me in very many ways. The previous people have said it, but let me just bring a slight example. I think in 2021, I call him up abruptly. I hadn't met him in person, and I tell him, look here, Isaac, there's a bunch of Makerere law students that want you to come and speak to them. That was, I think, lockdown or after lockdown 2020. So these students are having a meet and greet. It's, they catch up in all different years, first year, second year, third year, fourth year, they meet up. So I said, plus also students from other faculties. So I say, look here, Isaac, come through, talk to these guys. They are young, they will listen to more of you. They have listened to more of the legal scholars, and it's just in economics, it's the curve of diminishing returns. When you always listen to people who are so professional and something, the attention span reduces. Isaac comes in on short notice. Isaac comes in, mingles with them, talks to them. So I just want to let people know, Isaac might not be on the call to hear this, but Isaac is not running for president Uganda Law Society today. Like some people say, it started way back, but I can also say in 2021, him engaging with these students who are now enrolled and wherever they are, he picks their ideas, he picks their mind. And if you can look at his campaign, Back on Track and how it's traversing the country, you can see the nature of young lawyers he's actually traversing with. So back to the jurisprudence. We all remember Janus, the Roman god. Some of you who might not know, Janus was a Roman god that was two-faced. He had, I think, two heads. One head was facing at the front, the other head was facing at the back. Janus had two keys. Janus was known as the god for transition, the past and the future. I relate Ssemakadde to Janus. Why? Janus was the Roman god that had the ability to open what would have said by now, I think, dimensions. He would reflect on the past and then also open doors for the future. We need a Ssemakadde of the kind at his age. I've had people who knew him from the 90s. I'm only 33 years old. But Ssemakadde is able to reflect on the needs of those 50 and above. He's able to reflect on those who are perhaps the young lawyers 40 and below, and even the 25 and below. If you look at his campaign, he's consultative, transversing the country, trying to pick and get data, empirical data or statistics for his policies to then come and say, my manifesto is going to be A, B, C, and D. So for me, the point of him being liberal, willing to adjust and be taught and listen and be alive to the changes that are happening, that is why I'm voting Ssemakadde. If you see my Twitter name is Nkobi Pascal Trump, there's a reason why Trump is there now. I'm supporting Ssemakadde. I don't mind how you talk. I don't mind how you talk to me. You don't need to be my friend. If you check my Twitter, all my previous tweets for the past 3 years are always about US politics. It is always Ssemakadde. It is only Ssemakadde having me tweet about Ugandan politics or ULS politics. The reason. I don't mind how you talk. I don't mind how I may mind how you behave, but I focus on the method, on the policies and the message.
The substance and not the form.
Exactly. So now let me drive to my most important point, because it's a bit quite late, and trust me, all those that spoke before me, you've done yourselves, you've said it well. Why I'm rooting for Ssemakadde personally is this. We want a law society that is not dormant. And when I tell you, my fellow voters, as a person, I have seen most of those fellows on Twitter become what they are, lecture, be there, open up their law firms. I know many of them are fitting in with what they have. There is that saying of Ssemakadde is trying to open the curtain so that you look outside, but you're inside the dark sitting room and you're saying, no. If we open the curtain and go outside the window, we might actually be left in the cold. But you're saying outside it's bright and there's light in there, but you're choosing to stay in the sitting room where it is dark because you're saying, but we found a way to survive within this darkness. So let us stay within the darkness that we have. Ssemakadde is alive to the fact that things like pay for lawyers. I see lots of senior lawyers convincing you, my brothers and sisters, that you see the legal profession, the more you work, the network you bring, the big clients you bring, then the percentage, then you negotiate your way to partnership. Law firms are a business. And learn this from me if you haven't, 40 years and below. Perhaps some of you know it better. As long as you're not a relative to the partner, as long as you're in a law firm and you don't have any express ties, if it's not a big client that you brought and demanded it, that you be part of a case or you be probably promoted or something, you will always be used, and that is it. That's why Robert Kiyosaki says, mind your business. If it is not yours, don't get too attached. Learn as much as possible, free yourself. That is what Ssemakadde brings. Currently, some of you might not know or might know. Lawyers, let's vote for Ssemakadde for this reason. He is alive to the fact that issues of pay for lawyers is a worldwide issue. Last year, I think you remember, barristers in the UK were protesting overpayment. Protesting lively on streets with their wigs and their gowns. Barristers were protesting on the streets. If some of us are more alive to this than our domestic practice or whatsoever, to me, which is boring anyway, you are alive to the fact that law firms, world-leading law firms, Kirkland and Ellis, Freshfields, Baker McKenzie, Clifford Chance, White and Case, you are alive to the fact that these law firms have been in competition to implement the minimum wage for junior lawyers. So what am I trying to say? That as much as you think about your Uganda Law Society and your small fraternity, choose a candidate that is thinking visionary. That is Ssemakadde. Is telling you, I am giving you something for 2060, as much as my tenure is 1 year. When you see in the US that the average annual salary for a lawyer is $100,000, $52 per hour. UK, £50,000 annually, £25 per hour. How do you think these guys reached there? It has been a battle of transition. The old people are saying, no. Work as much as possible. Give us all your hours. Bring a huge client. You who is 32 years old, when are you going to be able to land Guangzhou, to land Sinok, or whatsoever it is or something? You're just 10 years into the field. What are the chances, however good you are, that you're going to land that? Then we say, Ssemakadde is coming in to say, okay, how do we liberalize the profession? How do we make sure There are jobs for lawyers, for attorneys, for advocates, those who have not enrolled but have studied the law. There are jobs for paralegals, those who have only done diplomas. This is how liberal we need to be. We don't need to be selfish. The current regime, once they have passed through the sieve, that is it for them and they are sorted. I was so hurt at Makerere University when they scrapped the evening class program. Some of us back then benefited through that. But when people went through and they scrapped it, everyone was like, now teaching Kwatako. As we speak today, Makerere doesn't have an evening program. I think they have morning and afternoon. But no one talks about it because that's the mentality we've had. As long as you're out of the mix as an individual, it no longer affects you. What Ssemakadde is trying to bring is saying, let's bang the table. We shall not break it. But once we bang the table, there will be sound and alarm. Everyone will come to a standstill, and when we'll say, what is the issue? In that moment of the standstill, that is when we say, minimum pay for lawyers. That is when we say, the bar, do we maintain it, or do we say we decentralize it? Let it be like someone said, a UNEBO, a national council of the sorts or something, or an SSC of the sorts, but all universities can actually be able to conduct studies for the bar. And some of these things I've seen before the Attorney General, I think, rectified the issue of admission. I had someone suggesting that they should return pre-entry. Okay, but you're forgetting that some of you are not aware. Lawyers, I want you to be alive to worldwide legal politics. Don't just focus on your Uganda, because that is where we're headed to. Look at the UK. We had what we call the Bar Council Aptitude Test, the BCAT. It was scrapped off. That was the equivalent of what you had here in your Uganda for pre-entries, which has just been, I think, scrapped, 6 years ago or 7.